Happy Friday. In this video, we're going to talk about specific use items versus general use items. I'm Daniel Norton, photographer here in New York. If you're interested in videos about photography and the arts, go ahead and subscribe. So this is 5 Minute Friday, so we'll see if I can do this in 5 minutes. So there's lots of tools that we have as photographers, and I generally like to think that your best bet is always going to go with something that is more versatile if you are a location photographer, because that's just less stuff to carry, right? There are times, of course, where there's very specific tools that you want. And if you're a studio photographer, you can afford to have, hopefully the space, to have tons and tons of specific tools to do specific jobs. But when you're on location, you want as much versatility as possible. This is my general rule. It's not always accurate, of course. Sometimes you need a very specific thing, even when you're a location photographer. But, you know, as a general tool, you don't want to have something in your bag that's only good for one thing. So, that being said, I just wanted to kind of give an example of like evolution of things and how things can convert and change, and some tools that I'm using now. So I use ProPhoto flashes, as you probably know, and I've been using the A1s for a while. And ProPhoto came out with a new adapter for it, which we're going to talk about in a second. But when I first got the A1s, I thought, well, okay, these are small flashes. I want to be able to put a softbox on it. There were lots of items out there that were made to go directly onto small flash. I generally don't own that stuff because I do a lot of studio work. So for me, I typically use my studio modifiers, like my softboxes and umbrellas and stuff, on my small flash. Now, in order to make that work with the A1, it was a little bit more difficult. Now, ProPhoto did have something that they made a long time ago. Ooh, if I can lift this up. This beast, I bought two of these. Okay, so this gives you an octagon-shaped speed ring, essentially, to put softboxes. It has 4 shoes. And you might be thinking, 4 shoes? I mean, there's enough space in there for 4 flashes. Well, the reason for that is this came out in a time when people were using small flashes. They needed to cluster them together because they weren't as strong, right? And most small flashes did not have in them radios. A lot of them had an optical sensor, but if you were on location outside, which is when you're typically going to want to put a bunch of flashes together, optical sensors were not always as accurate. So, that being said, ProPhoto made this awesome beast that could hold 2 flashes, 2 remotes, stick it into a softbox, shoot outside. Yay, life is great. This thing weighs more than all my A1s together, right? But, you know, I used it because this is what I had. Now, you may have seen, I did another video, if I can find it somewhere on this channel, I'll put a link to it, where I talk a little bit about how I modified some parts from Shimera, the softbox company that I love their softboxes, to create my own, which was much smaller and much easier, but it is a lot of parts. So I was kind of always looking for another solution. And also, all that really gives you is the ability to use softboxes. But ProPhoto just came out with this. So this, I don't even know what it's called. This is it's like a microscope, or not a microscope, a magnifying glass. If you're familiar with ProPhoto, this thing right here will look familiar to you. That is the exact size of the front of most ProPhoto lights. That means that this creation, this very specific tool, is actually more versatile than this thing that's more generic, because it's got the space for the A1. Most flashes today have radios built in, right? So we don't need all those extra spaces. It has an ability to put an umbrella on it. It can mount onto a stand directly. It's way smaller, right? And because of the nature of the size of this, it's more versatile. I can get an octagon-shaped speed ring, which I already have from my studio lights, and I can put it on here, creating more or less, you know, the same thing as that. It's still big and bulky, you know, because it's a big speed ring. But if I wanted to make it smaller, I could use, let's say, my regular square Shimera speed ring here and put that on there. Because again, anything that fits on ProPhoto can fit. I'm not buying stuff that's specific for flash. Now, I don't want to disparage, you know, the idea of stuff that's made for small flashes. I know that there's very specific boxes. Westcott makes a lot of them that are made for small flashes. If you are like me and you shoot a lot of studio and you shoot a lot of location, that's just buying stuff twice. So for me, buying the studio type gear and then modifying it for my small flashes gives me more versatility, and it's just a better option. Is this thing kind of pricey? Yeah, but the things that it gives me make it worth it. And here's the final kind of thing. Anything ProPhoto will fit on this, right? Magnum reflectors, beauty dishes, anything that's made for ProPhoto. This makes the A1 way more versatile. It makes it truly like having a regular flash, less powerful, of course, on location for me. So for me, versatility wins, even though it's kind of a weird thing, even though this is a very specific thing, right? It's for the A1, it's for ProPhoto. But for me, this becomes more versatile. So what do you guys use when you go on location? Do you just use softboxes, or do you have some kind of modifier that allows you to use your other gear with your small flashes? Assuming you're using other gear, right? When I'm outside and I'm shooting in the sun, I typically don't want to use a giant softbox. I want to use punchier light like a Magnum. So for me, this wins. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you next week.